Dr Hilton, back for your second appearance at Estimates.
Indeed. Thank you, Senator.
And representatives of CSIRO. And if you did have a written opening statement, we would need to table it, obviously, at this stage. Dr Hilton.
I think it's been tabled.
Excellent, thank you. We look forward to seeing that. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. I have some questions for Mr Paul Graham about the Gen Cost report.
Thank you, Senator. I'm happy to at least make an initial comment.
Well, I think he might need to come to the table. I see him at the back there. They're specifically about statements he has made. So, look, obviously you're welcome to comment on them. I'm just referring to a webinar that was held, I think, on the 2nd of February, where Mr Graham was asked why did the CSIRO exclude consideration of large-scale nuclear reactors from the Gen Cost report. In the answer to that question, Mr Graham, you said that you referred to workshops, face-to-face workshops held in 2018. You said, and I quote, there weren't any nuclear experts at those workshops. You later on went on to say that I've got meeting notes from that meeting which says that large-scale nuclear isn't the right size for Australia. Did the CSIRO have anything other than those meeting notes to make the decision not to look at large-scale nuclear in the Gen Cost report?
Paul Graham, Chief Economist, Energy at CSIRO. That time in 2018 was when essentially we started the Gen Cost project, and that was a time when we were sort of setting and talking to the industry about what projects we should include, what sort of technologies we should include. Once we sort of did the first run of the Gen Cost report, and in probably the 5 years after that, we didn't get any major avalanche of submissions sort of saying that we should have large-scale nuclear. We definitely got probably 2 or 3, but it wasn't there wasn't a sense that we were on the wrong track. And in the most recent round of submissions, we've just had 40 submissions received this month. There is a very strong suggestion that we should consider large-scale nuclear, but I would say in the 5 years previous to that, really only a handful of feedback in that regard.
But I would just return to my question, which, with all respect, I don't think was answered.
So just to clarify, that's the total of feedback that I've got records of.
Right.
I don't have any records of any other feedback.
But in 2018, or when you started the Gen Cost report and didn't include large-scale nuclear, did you have any more information but meeting notes from a meeting which you described yourself had no nuclear experts at it?
So just to clarify my answer, our process is that we have consultation and we put out a draft report each year and we have consultation on that. That's our main way of collecting information about what industry want in the report and how they're receiving the information that we provide. And as I said, we've only had in the past 5 years prior to the last round of submissions, I could only find a handful of
But just on this point,
that actually asked for large-scale nuclear.
So the difficulty I've got here is you said also at this webinar that at that workshop, you said that there were the people there were the sort you'd expect at the time, generation companies, transmission companies, developers. Now, of course, at that time, including now, there is no domestic nuclear industry. So you're getting your information from presumably coal, gas, renewable companies. Clearly, they have a vested interest in not having nuclear power in Australia. Why would the CSIRO base a decision to not look at an alternative energy technology by only talking to the very people that would compete against that technology?
Senator, I think maybe there's a misunderstanding. We've obviously done this report a number of times, so I think picking 2018 as a window and characterising that as being the only moment in time where we have sought expertise on the Gen Cost report is probably not fair.
Well, I'm only quoting Mr Graham's words.
and that the fact that we've been able to go through this process 5 times through different consultations, drawing on expertise from a wide range of experts, I think shows that we have an open mind about technologies.
Perhaps you could take on notice, because we have very limited time, what other times you've spoken to experts since 2018. It seems like the initial decision was based only on discussions with competitors to nuclear energy, and you could take on notice what other discussions you've had since then, including any discussions you've had with people who, you know, might actually know about the nuclear industry, because that doesn't seem to have happened there. Now, I've got very limited time, so I'll have to move on. Could you take that on notice?
We can take that on notice.
We just wanted to turn to, also in GenCost, the issue of coal price assumptions. There's some information that has been, or that I've seen, that those assumptions, this is the fuel price assumptions, seem to be based off the inputs and assumptions into the ISP process. Is that correct?
Yes, we use the inputs and assumptions workbook that AMO publishes as the source. So
when I look at that document and the coal prices in the workbook that is publicly available, I should take a step back. Your price assumptions for fuel price for coal in 2023 seem to be at a low point of $4.30 per gigajoule and a high point of $11.30 per gigajoule. When I look then and see the table of prices, fuel prices at different power stations in the ISR, AEMO's assumptions, that $4.30, the low price, seems to be the average of the coal prices, whereas the $11.30, the high price, seems to be the maximum. Why have you chosen a minimum as a mean and used the maximum for the maximum? That doesn't seem to make any mathematical sense.
Yes, I can explain that, Senator. So there has been a change in the methodology that AMO use. I can't remember exactly when it occurred, but they've stopped publishing a coal price for new coal plants. And I suspect that's because they don't expect there will be any new coal plants. In the past, they did have a separate table which said this is the coal price that a new greenfield coal plant could potentially get from the market. In the absence of that information, they still provide that for gas, but they don't provide that for coal anymore. In the absence of that information, all we can look at is the coal prices that current plants are receiving. Now, the problem with looking at coal prices for current plants is that their prices actually reflect maybe long-term contracts that they've been able to successfully go into before, for example, the latest coal price spike occurred. So some coal plants are sitting on a 10-year contract. They're not affected by the coal price spike that we experienced. But if you are a greenfield coal plant who's coming in, you don't have an existing contract, you're going to face those higher prices. So that's why we have to take the higher price.
It makes no sense to me. Even that explanation still makes no sense, because if you want to get a low point, like the lowest possible point, it makes no sense for me to take the mean of an existing range, especially a mean which some of those plants, like Araring in your model, are at high points due to the Ukraine war. But I'll put that aside. The methodology seems ridiculous. Mr Graham, I think you have, unfortunately, with all due respect, shown a high degree of ignorance there of how coal-fired power plants work. And let me hear you out. I mean, one of your plants in the model is Kogan Creek, in the AEMO's workbook. It has a fuel price of $1.57 gigajoule. It has a stranded mine. It has a pad right next to Kogan Creek, what was to be A. We could build another power plant. You could build another. In fact, the plan was to build another coal-fired power plant there. That coal can be accessed at exactly the same price today because it's cost. It's effectively the mine cost. So have you looked at the Kogan Creeks, the Millmerrons, who have stranded coal mines and can actually achieve the $1.50 gigajoule price even with a new coal power station? Why haven't you factored that in?
Senator Canavan, the witnesses don't come here to be insulted. They come here to answer questions based on their expertise. You did say something insulting. Would you consider withdrawing?
Look, I'm happy to withdraw. I was only, of course, commenting on the discussion about coal-fired power plants.
Okay.
But Mr. Graham,
if Mr.
why
Graham
haven't
can
you factored
answer the
in the
subsequent
fact
question.
that at stranded coal mines you can achieve fuel price costs of $1.50? In fact, the cost curve for coal mines in Australia, about 80% of them are below $2 a gigajoule. Now, some of them have to pay export prices, so it's above cost. But some of them don't, and new ones might not have to, especially if they'd entered into a long-term contract. Why hasn't that been factored in?
So we've had a long-standing approach that we only include greenfield new projects in GenCost. There is a separate process that AMO has for extending coal plant at existing brownfield sites, but we're looking at new coal plants only.
So it's new coal-fired power and moving the Overton window of coalition thinking from experimental small nuclear reactors to big ones now. Which coastal Queensland states do you want to put these?
Minister, I think the problem here...
Where's that all going to go?
The problem here is your government is relying heavily on this highly criticised work. It is discredited, in my view, this work now. Totally discredited.
Experimental nuclear reactors.
CSIRO work has been criticised by many experts. And it has now been revealed that they're making dodgy mathematical decisions associated with their assumptions. They're relying on information about nuclear from the competitors of nuclear energy. Their whole process is conflicted and discredited now, and it should not be used as a basis for public policy.
Could I make a comment, please?
You can, Dr Hilton. Can I just do one thing before I call you, Dr Hilton, which is say that we've only got 7 minutes left. I'm going to give a few minutes to Senator Whish-Wilson, and we also have Senator Rennick in the room who has one question. That's where we're at, so we're going to be very brief. Shall I go to Senate? Yep. So have you concluded, Senator Kennedy? Thank you. Senator Whish-Wilson. Thanks,
Thank you,
Dr.
Chair.
Hilton.
I've just
You're on
got
mute.
a question. Should be okay now?
No, we don't have you, Senator Whish-Wilson. No, unfortunately we don't. Obviously we did have you before. I'll just go to Senator Rennick while we sort that out. Senator Rennick.
Yeah, hi guys. I've got a question. What specific advice has the CSIRO given to environmental departments as to the risks of pumping up to 730 million litres of CO2 into the Great Artesian Basin, specifically the Precipice Sandstone Water Aquifer of the Great Artesian Basin?
So, Senator Peter Mayfield, Executive Director for Environment, Energy and Resources. So I think you're referring to the CTSCO project in the CSIRO, I'm assuming?
Yeah, but in general there are risks involved in pumping CO2.
So CSIRO has provided some advice to Queensland Department of Environment and Science around looking at the EIS and those studies at this point in time. I would refer you to the QDES to talk to them, given that we've provided that to them.
Can I get that on notice? Can you share that advice with me?
We'd have to consult with Queensland Department of Environment and Science. The information was provided to them.
But you're an Australian government and I'm an Australian senator, so what you give to the Queensland state government, surely you can share to senators, especially Queensland
We will talk to them and try and see what's possible there. I don't have the right.
Committee.
It was provided to them confidentially as part of their considerations of that project.
I think Dr Mayfield's taken on notice to see what he can provide the committee, which I think is satisfactory. Senator Rennick.
Yeah, but what if, my point is we shouldn't have to, I'm happy to take it on notice, it's just that I don't know why you need permission.
I just want to go through the protocol.
That's great.
Senator.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. Can you hear me now?
We can, loud and clear.
Yeah, fantastic. I better be quick. Can I just ask in relation to the investigator, which of course is home port, is Hobart in Tasmania, if you have forward funding for 300 days of science in 2025 and 2026?
Thank you, Senator. As you're aware, CSIRO hosts a number of different national facilities, of which the Marine National Facility is one. We applied for funding from NCRIS and were awarded less than we applied for, and that means that the investigator is not funded for the full 300 days of sailing at this stage.
I've just had a look on your the MFP voyage program, and I can only see the 2025 year, but it looks about 180 days, which is kind of where we started when the Investigator was built. Would that be correct?
I'll take that on notice. The expert on our infrastructure is unable to attend today, so I'm happy to take that one on notice.
And what can you tell me about 26 and 27?
I'd take that one.
Is that funding also and the planning also in lockdown at around 180 days?
I'll take that on notice, Senator.
Minister, are you aware of the funding shortfall for the Investigator in those years, and the fact that scientists try to plan these expeditions and their programs years in advance, and they're not able to do so at the moment?
I'm sorry, Senator. I'm here representing the Minister, of course, and I'm not in a position to do anything but take those questions on notice. I understand the direction of your questions, and I see that CSIRO, I take that on notice. If I can provide any further information, I will.
Could I ask CSIRO if they've had discussions with the Minister around this issue, or sought other avenues of funding for those forward voyage years?
We're looking at our forward budgets for the Investigator at the moment, and that's something that we look at every year. So absolutely, we are looking for other sources of funding.
I'm sure you are. Just from a personal point of view, we worked really hard to get the Investigator from 180 to 300 days, and I commend the previous government for doing that. And it'd be a real shame to see the great work that you do and the scientists do not fully funded. Just to make a point. Just my last question, probably two of them. I follow great white shark research very closely, and I was just wondering if you could tell me how much funding is going into CSIRO's long-standing work on white sharks, especially around population studies. And I see you've previously funded close kin programs and other tagging programs through the NESP. But where are we at the moment, and how long since you've received funding for this?
Again, that's a kind of detailed question on a project. I'd be happy to take that on notice, Senator.
Are you aware if there's any ongoing funding or any tagging CSIRO are doing, either for acoustic receivers or for satellite tagging?
So, Senator, I think most of the work that we have done in that space has been around using the genetic techniques to try and do population estimation.
The close kin?
Yeah, and the intent was to do those every 5 years or so. So it's not yet at a point where we're intending to do the next study. But
okay.
So I'm not aware of any funding in that space at the moment, but we can check, as Dr Hilton said, to see if there's any other activity. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson.
Ask one last question, Chair, if that's okay.
You've got 1 minute, yep.
Yeah, thank you. If you could also take on notice, I know that the population studies have been really important and the genetic testing, but CSIRO also used to do a lot of satellite tagging, which assisted state governments. Some of them are doing their own. But in the southwest white shark population in Western Australia and South Australia, it looks like there's very little work going on with the tagging of white sharks, and of course there's been some tragic and traumatic shark bites this summer that's raised the profile of this issue. So I'd be also keen to hear if you've been approached by any state governments or federal governments to step up research in that area, especially satellite tagging.
Yeah, no, we will take that part on notice and just check, because I'm not aware of anything at this point in time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Major.
Wilson, shark questions have brought the proceedings to a finish.
Oh, Minister, thank you very much, Dr. Hilton and the CSIRO team. Thank you very much, Ms. Quinn, for your endurance effort. Thank you. Did I thank the Minister? Did I want to? Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Senators. The committee's consideration of the 23-24 additional budget estimates is concluded, and the hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. Well
Excellent
done.
job, Chair.
Landed.
Thanks, Matt.